The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched earth of southern Colorado, baking the red dust until it shimmered like a mirage. Clara Hemsworth wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her forehead. She'd been mending fence posts since dawn, her calloused hands working the wire with practiced efficiency. The ranch sprawled before her, 500 acres of stubborn land that fought her every effort to tame it. It had been 3 months since Samuel died. 3 months since she'd found his broken body at the base of Devil's Ridge, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle, his horse standing nearby with wild, frightened eyes. An accident, Sheriff Thompson had declared, barely glancing at the scene before spitting tobacco juice into the dust. Samuel had been thrown. Simple as that. These things happened out here where the land was as unforgiving as the people. But Clara knew her husband. Samuel had been riding these trails since he was old enough to sit a saddle. He knew every rock, every gully, every treacherous turn. The mare he'd been riding, Buttercup, was the gentlest creature on the ranch, spooked by nothing more threatening than her own shadow. The story didn't sit right, like a boot on the wrong foot. She straightened, pressing a hand to the small of her aching back, and surveyed her domain. The cattle were growing thin. She'd have to move them to the northern pasture soon, where a small creek still ran despite the drought. The work was too much for one person, but hiring hands cost money she didn't have. Samuel had left her with little more than debt and questions. The sound of hoofbeats made her reach for the Winchester propped against the fence post. Out here, visitors rarely brought good news. She shaded her eyes against the glare and watched as a lone rider approached from the direction of town. The man who rode up was a stranger, sitting his horse with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle. He wore his gun low on his hip, tied down in the fashion of men who expected to use it. His face was weathered beneath the wide brim of his hat, with lines that spoke of hard living and harder choices. When he tipped his hat to her, she caught a glimpse of dark eyes that seemed to carry shadows. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Name's Jace Colton. I'm the new sheriff." Clara didn't lower the rifle. "Sheriff Thompson finally drink himself to death?" A ghost of a smile touched the stranger's lips. "Found him with a bullet in his back 2 weeks ago. Town council figured they needed someone who might last longer than a month." "And they hired you?" She looked him over again, taking in the worn leather of his holster, the careful way he kept his hands visible. "You don't look like any lawman I've ever seen." "No, ma'am, I reckon I don't." He shifted in his saddle, leather creaking. "I'm making rounds, introducing myself to folks. Heard you had some trouble a while back." "My husband died. That's old news." 3 months isn't so old. Mind if I water my horse?" Clara hesitated, then nodded toward the trough. As Colton dismounted, she noticed the way he moved. Alert, cautious, like a man expecting trouble from every quarter. His horse was a magnificent black stallion, well cared for despite the dust of travel. "You're working this place alone?" he asked, letting his horse drink. "That's none of your concern. Sheriff, everything in this county is my concern now." He pulled off his hat, revealing dark hair shot through with premature silver. "A woman alone out here, especially one whose husband died under questionable circumstances, that makes you vulnerable." Clara's grip tightened on the rifle. "Samuel's death was an accident. Everyone said so. Everyone says a lot of things. Doesn't make them true." Colton's eyes met hers, and she saw something unexpected there, not suspicion or accusation, but understanding. "I've been looking through the old files. Your husband wasn't the first rancher to die accidentally in recent months." The words sent a chill down Clara's spine despite the heat. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet, just observing patterns." He put his hat back on. "You had any trouble since he passed? Anyone pressuring you to sell?" Clara thought of Vernon Pike's visits, his oily smile and thinly veiled threats, the way his eyes roamed over her property like he already owned it. "Why would you care?" "Because it's my job to care." Colton swung back into the saddle with fluid grace. "And because I don't like seeing folks pushed around by those with deeper pockets." Just then, A commotion erupted from the direction of town. Even from a distance, they could hear raised voices carried on the wind. Colton's hand dropped to his gun instinctively. "That's coming from the trading post," Clara said, recognizing the direction. Without another word, Colton spurred his horse toward town. After a moment's hesitation, Clara grabbed her rifle and followed on foot, curiosity overcoming caution. By the time she reached the edge of town, a crowd had gathered outside Murphy's trading post. In the center of the chaos, a drunk cowhand had cornered Mary Crowfeather, one of the few Arapaho women who still came to trade in Red Creek. His companions laughed as he grabbed at her blanket, trying to pull it away. "Come on, squaw, show us what you're hiding under there." The drunk slurred. Stumbling forward, Clara pushed through the crowd, fury rising in her chest. Before she could speak, Colton appeared, moving through the onlookers like smoke. "That's enough," he said quietly, but his voice carried authority that cut through the noise. The drunk turned, squinting at the sheriff's badge. "Mind your own business. Lawman. We're just having some fun." "Fun's over." Colton's hand rested casually on his gun. "The lady's leaving. You boys are going to let her, or what?" The cowhand's friends moved closer, emboldened by liquor and numbers. "You gonna arrest us all?" What happened next was so fast Clara almost missed it. Colton's gun cleared leather in a blur. The barrel pressed against the drunk's forehead before anyone could blink. The crowd went silent. "Or I'm going to start with you," Colton said conversationally, "and work my way through your friends until someone develops sense. Your choice." The drunk's face went pale beneath the dirt and stubble. His friends backed away, suddenly finding their boots very interesting. Mary Crowfeather gathered her dignity and her goods, walking away with her head high, but Clara wasn't done. She stepped forward, her rifle prominent. "Tom Brennan, you should be ashamed. Would your mother want to see you acting like this? And you, Jake, doesn't your wife have enough troubles without you drinking away your pay and harassing innocent women?" The men shuffled their feet like scolded children. Clara's reputation as a straight shooter, both with words and Winchester, carried weight even among the rowdy element. "Get out of here," Colton added, holstering his weapon. "Next time I won't be so understanding." As the crowd dispersed, Colton turned to Clara. "That was brave. Also foolish. Someone had to say something. This town's been sliding toward lawlessness ever since." She stopped herself. "Since your husband died," Colton finished. "Interesting timing, wouldn't you say?" Clara looked at him sharply. "What do you know about Samuel?" "Not enough. Yet." He touched his hat brim. "Ma'am, I'd appreciate if you'd be careful. Lock your doors at night. Keep that rifle handy." "I always do." As Colton rode away, Clara noticed Vernon Pike watching from the doorway of his bank, his pale eyes following the new sheriff with calculation. When his gaze shifted to her, she suppressed a shudder. There was something predatory in that look, something that made her think of vultures circling a dying animal. That night, Clara sat by her small fire, patching a tear in her work dress. The ranch house felt too large, too empty without Samuel's presence. Not that he'd been much company those last months, coming home late, reeking of whiskey and secrets. She'd found papers hidden in his desk after he died, loan documents, land transfers, correspondence with names she didn't recognize. The numbers made her head swim and her heart sink. Samuel had borrowed against the ranch, far more than they could ever repay. A board creaked on the porch. Clara's hand found the rifle before her mind registered the sound. She waited, heart pounding, listening to the darkness beyond the firelight. Another creak. The doorknob rattled. "Who's there?" she called, cocking the Winchester. Silence answered her. Then, slowly, footsteps retreated across the porch and faded into the night. Clara remained frozen, rifle trained on the door, until dawn painted the sky pink and gold. When she finally ventured outside, she found boot prints in the dust, large, deep impressions from a heavy man. But more disturbing was what she discovered in the barn. Someone had been through the feed stores, tossing bags aside, searching for something. Nothing appeared to be missing, but the violation made her skin crawl. She thought of Sheriff Colton's warning. Perhaps the new lawman saw more clearly than she'd given him credit for. Red Creek was changing, shadows growing longer and darker with each passing day. And Clara, alone on her ranch with only questions and debts for company, stood directly in their path. The morning sun climbed higher, baking the earth anew, and Clara Hemsworth prepared for another day of fighting the land, fighting her fears, and fighting whatever forces had killed her husband and now circled her like wolves in the night. Jace Colton spread the yellowed papers across his desk in the cramped sheriff's office, studying them by lamplight. The patterns were becoming clearer with each document he reviewed. 4 ranchers dead in 18 months, all from accidents. All had been in debt. All had refused to sell their land to Vernon Pike's Cattlemen's Association. He pulled out a map of the county, marking each death with an X. They formed a rough circle around the richest grazing land and the underground streams that fed them. Samuel Hemsworth's ranch sat right in the middle, the keystone that would give Pike control of the water rights for the entire valley. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Deputy Frank Morrison peered in, his young face eager. "Sheriff, you wanted to know about any old debts being cleared? What did you find?" 3 more, all in the last 2 years. Widows whose husbands died sudden-like. Debts mysteriously paid off right after they sold to Pike. Frank shifted nervously. "People are starting to talk. They're saying you're stirring up trouble where there ain't none. Let them talk." Jace leaned back in his chair. "What else?" "That Hemsworth woman. Folks say she's sitting on the biggest debt of all, near $20,000, if the rumors are true." Jace whistled low. That was enough to buy 3 ranches outright. What had Samuel Hemsworth needed with that kind of money? The next morning found him at the Hemsworth ranch again. Clara was hauling water from the well, her movements efficient despite the obvious strain. She looked up as he approached, wariness and exhaustion warring in her expression. "Sheriff, come to warn me about more dangers? Come to ask about your husband's business dealings." She set down the bucket hard enough to slosh water over the sides. Samuel's business was ranching, nothing more. $20,000 says otherwise. Clara went still. "How do you know about that?" "It's my job to know." Jace dismounted, moving closer. "Mrs. Hemsworth, I think your husband was murdered. I think Pike's behind it. And I think you're next unless we figure out what Samuel was really doing with that money. Even if I believed you, what difference would it make? The debt's real. Pike holds the papers. In 2 months, he can legally take everything, unless we prove he obtained those papers through murder." Clara laughed bitterly. "Prove? With what? Sheriff Thompson barely looked at Samuel's body. There's no evidence, no witnesses." "Then help me find some." Jace pulled out a notebook. "Start with the last few months before he died. Any changes in behavior? New associates?" Clara turned away, but not before he caught the flicker of pain in her eyes. The last 6 months, Samuel was different, secretive. He'd leave for days, said he was checking the northern pastures, but he'd come back without any dust on him. Started locking his study, keeping books I wasn't allowed to see. Did he meet with anyone unusual? There was a man. Clara's voice dropped. Called himself Mr. Smith, which wasn't his real name. I'm sure. City clothes, soft hands. Came by 3, maybe 4 times. Samuel always sent me away when he visited. Jace made notes. What did this Smith look like? Medium height, brown hair, forgettable face, but his eyes. She shuddered. Cold as Winter Creek water. And he wore this ring, silver, with a strange symbol, like a twisted star. Before Jace could respond, the thunder of approaching horses made them both turn. Vernon Pike rode up with 6 men, all armed. Pike himself cut an impressive figure, silver-haired, well-dressed, with the bearing of a man used to getting his way. Mrs. Hemsworth. He touched his hat brim mockingly. And our new sheriff. How convenient to find you both here. State your business. Pike. Jace said evenly. My business is with the widow. Pike's smile was sharp as a blade. I've come with a generous offer. I'll buy her out now, clear the debt, and even leave her with traveling money. Say $500. The ranch is worth 10 times that, Clara said through gritted teeth. Not with $20,000 in debt against it. Pike leaned forward in his saddle. Take the offer. Clara, it won't get better. Is that a threat? Jace stepped between them. Pike's men shifted, hands moving toward their guns. The air grew thick with tension. It's business advice, Pike said smoothly. Though I wonder, Sheriff, what business you have here? Seems mighty cozy. You spending so much time with the widow? People might get the wrong idea. People can think what they like. Jace replied. My business is investigating suspicious deaths, including Samuel Hemsworth's. Pike's face darkened. That was ruled an accident. I'm ruling it suspicious, and I'll be looking into your connection to it. Careful, Sheriff. Pike's voice carried warning. You're new here. You don't understand how things work. Men who stir up too much dust tend to choke on it. Is that what happened to Sheriff Thompson? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Pike's men exchanged glances, suddenly uneasy. Take the offer, Clara, Pike said finally, ignoring Jace. You have until the end of the week. After that, he smiled coldly. Well, the law is the law, and the law says that debt must be paid. They watched Pike and his men ride away in a cloud of dust. Clara's hands were shaking. He killed Samuel, she whispered. I know it now, the way he smiled. Knowing and proving are different things. Jace touched her shoulder gently. But we'll find a way. I promise you that. That evening, Clara was feeding the chickens when she heard the gunshot. It came from the direction of the road, the sharp crack echoing across the valley. She grabbed the rifle and ran. She found Jace's horse first, standing riderless by the road. Then she saw him, crouched behind a boulder, blood seeping through his shirt sleeve. Get down, he shouted, just as another shot splintered the rock above her head. Clara dove behind a fallen log, her heart racing. How many? 2, maybe 3, in those trees. He winced, pressing a hand to his wound. They were waiting, knew I'd be coming this way. Clara peered over the log, catching a glimpse of movement in the cottonwoods. She fired, the Winchester kicking against her shoulder. A yelp of pain rewarded her effort. Good shot, Jace grunted. Can you keep them busy? I'll flank left. You're wounded. I've had worse. He checked his revolver. On 3. Clara laid down covering fire while Jace moved, despite his injury. The bushwhackers fired back, but their shots were wild, panicked. Within minutes, she heard Jace's Colt boom from their left. More shouts, then the sound of horses galloping away. When she reached Jace, he was leaning against a tree, face pale but eyes alert. Winged one, he said, but they got away. Clara examined his arm. The bullet had passed through the flesh, missing bone and major vessels. You're lucky. Come back to the house. I'll clean and bandage this. In her kitchen, working by lamplight, Clara carefully cleaned the wound. Jace sat stoically, but she noticed the way his jaw tightened when she poured whiskey over the torn flesh. This is my fault, she said quietly. Pike's sending a message. Pike's showing his hand. Jace caught her wrist gently. This means we're close to something. Men don't bushwhack sheriffs over coincidences. Clara became aware of how close they were, of the warmth of his hand on her skin. She pulled away, focusing on wrapping the bandage. You should leave. Go back to wherever you came from. This isn't your fight. I've made it my fight. His voice was soft but firm. I've run from enough in my life. Not anymore. What are you running from? Jace was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried old pain. I had a brother once, younger than me. I was supposed to protect him. Got caught up with the wrong crowd. Did things I'm not proud of. When I tried to get us out, to go straight, he trailed off. They killed him. Shot him down in front of me. I've been drifting ever since. trying to find a way to balance the scales. Clara finished tying off the bandage. And you think saving me will do that? Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of seeing bad men win. He stood, testing his arm. Either way, I'm not leaving. Not until this is finished. Later that night, as Clara lay sleepless in her bed, she heard horses approaching. She crept to the window, rifle in hand, and watched as riders circled her house in the darkness. They didn't approach, just rode slowly around the perimeter. Their presence a threat more effective than any violence. The message was clear. She was alone, vulnerable, and Pike could reach her whenever he chose. But as she gripped the rifle tighter, Clara thought of Jace's determined eyes, of the way he'd risked his life for her today. Maybe she wasn't as alone as Pike thought. The morning sun cast long shadows as Clara and Jace rode through the canyon toward the northern pastures. She'd finally agreed to show him Samuel's hidden study materials, ledgers and documents she'd discovered stuffed behind loose boards in the barn. The papers painted a troubling picture of loans from mysterious sources and land deals that made no sense. "This symbol," Jace said, pointing to a mark on one document as they rode. "Same as the ring you described on that Mr. Smith. Samuel started using it on everything those last months, like some kind of seal." Clara guided her mare around a rocky outcrop. "I found more papers hidden in the old line shack. That's where we're headed." The land grew rougher as they climbed, red rocks jutting from the earth like broken teeth. Clara couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Beside her, Jace rode with his injured arm held carefully, but his eyes constantly scanned the ridgelines. They found Tom Brennan at the line shack, the same drunk who'd harassed Mary Crowfeather in town, but he was stone sober now, loading supplies onto a pack mule with a nervous efficiency. "Mrs. Hemsworth," he said, touching his hat. His eyes slid to Jace's badge. "Sheriff. Tom." Clara kept her voice neutral. "What brings you out here?" "Mister, Pike hired me to check the water holes. Making sure they ain't dried up." He fumbled with the mule's lead rope. "I should be going." "Hold on," Jace said. "You worked for Samuel Hemsworth, didn't you?" Tom's Adam's apple bobbed. "Some day work, mostly. Were you working for him the week he died?" "I don't remember." Jace dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate. "Think harder." Tom backed against the shack wall. "Look, I don't want no trouble. I got a family." "Then tell the truth," Clara said. "You were here that week. I saw your horse." The man's shoulders slumped. "Samuel hired me to help move some cattle, but not to the sale yards, to a canyon up north, off his property. Said to keep quiet about it." "Why?" Jace pressed. "Don't know. He paid well for silence." Tom's voice dropped. "But I saw men up there, city men with guns, and that fellow with the cold eyes. Smith. They were loading something onto wagons. Heavy crates. What happened then?" "Samuel sent me away. Said my work was done. 2 days later, he was dead." Tom grabbed his mule's lead. "That's all I know. Can I go?" Jace nodded, and Tom practically ran, leading his mule down the trail at a desperate pace. Inside the line shack, Clara pried up the loose floorboard where she'd hidden Samuel's most secret papers. The small space beneath was empty. "They're gone," she breathed. "Someone's been here?" Jace examined the hiding spot. "Recently, the dust's been disturbed." He stood, scanning the shack. "What exactly was in those papers?" "Maps, mostly, and lists of names I didn't recognize. Cities back east, Chicago, St. Louis, New York." Clara tried to remember. "And numbers, dates and numbers that didn't match any cattle sales I knew about." "Your husband was moving something besides cattle," Jace said grimly. "Something valuable enough to kill for." They searched the shack thoroughly, but found nothing else. As they prepared to leave, Clara noticed fresh horse tracks leading up the canyon, the direction Tom had mentioned. "We should go back," Jace said, reading her thoughts. "Get deputies. Come back prepared. By then, they'll have moved whatever's there." Clara turned her horse up the trail. "I need to know what Samuel was involved in." Jace cursed under his breath but followed. The canyon narrowed as they climbed, walls of red stone rising on either side. The air grew cooler, and Clara smelled water, a hidden spring that kept this area green even in drought. They heard voices before they saw anything. Jace motioned for silence, and they dismounted, tying the horses to a scraggly pine, moving carefully through the rocks. They crept forward until they could see into a natural bowl in the canyon. What they saw made Clara's breath catch. A camp sprawled below them, not a cattle camp, but something more permanent. Heavy wagons sat loaded with crates. Armed men lounged in the shade. And there, talking with two well-dressed strangers, stood Vernon Pike. "Shipment moves tonight," Pike was saying. "The Army Patrol changes shift at midnight. We'll have a clear run to the rail depot. Mr. Smith won't tolerate more delays." One stranger replied, "The buyers in Chicago are getting impatient. They'll get their guns." Pike snapped. "Every rifle, every box of ammunition we promised, but I need that Hemsworth land to expand operations. The widow's proving stubborn." Clara's hand found Jace's arm, gripping tight. Guns. They were smuggling weapons. "Should have killed her with the husband," the second stranger said casually. "Would have been cleaner." Too suspicious. Samuel's death already raised questions. "But don't worry, she'll be gone soon enough. That new sheriff, too, if he keeps interfering." Jace had heard enough. He tugged Clara back, and they retreated carefully to the horses. Neither spoke until they were well away from the camp. "Weapon smuggling," Jace said finally. "Using the cattle drives as cover. That's what your husband discovered. Or was part of," Clara said bitterly. "Those debts? Maybe they were investments? Maybe Samuel was their partner until he got cold feet. Either way, Pike killed him for it." Jace's face was grim. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Then I'll wire the federal marshals." A rifle shot cracked through the air. Jace's horse screamed and went down, throwing him hard. Clara wheeled her mare as more shots followed, echoing off the canyon walls. "Ride!" Jace shouted. Rolling behind the fallen horse, he drew his Colt, firing at the muzzle flashes above them. But Clara couldn't leave him. She slid from the saddle, Winchester in hand, and dove behind a boulder. Together they laid down fire, forcing their attackers to keep their heads down. "How many's?" Clara asked, reloading. "3, maybe 4. They must have had lookouts." Jace winced, his wounded arm bleeding fresh. "Clara, you need to run. Take your horse and—" "I'm not leaving you." "Damn stubborn woman," he muttered, but she caught the admiration in his voice. The gunfire intensified. Their position was poor, too exposed, with limited ammunition. Clara counted her remaining shells with growing dread. Then, like an answered prayer, thunder rumbled overhead. The clear sky had given way to building clouds while they'd been in the canyon. The first fat raindrops fell, then more, then a downpour that turned the world gray. "Now," Jace said. "Move!" They ran through the curtain of rain, Clara leading her horse while Jace covered their retreat. The storm had turned the trail treacherous, red clay becoming slick as oil. Behind them, shouts and gunfire grew fainter. They didn't stop until they reached an old trapper's cabin, abandoned but still solid. Clara's mare stood outside, too large to fit through the door. Inside, they collapsed against the walls, soaked and exhausted. "Well," Jace said, checking his Colt, "Pike knows we know. We can't prove anything. It's our word against his." Clara wrung water from her hair. "And he has the whole town bought or frightened." "Not the whole town." Jace met her eyes. "There are good people left. We just need to give them something to rally behind." The storm raged outside, turning afternoon dark as evening. They built a small fire from wood stacked by some previous visitor, hanging their outer clothes to dry. Clara became acutely aware of their isolation, of Jace sitting close in the flickering light. "You could have run," he said quietly. "Back there. Should have. Would you have? If it were reversed?" "No." A rueful smile touched his lips. "Guess we're both fools. Samuel would have run." Clara said suddenly, "Oh, he was brave enough with cattle and horses, but with people, with real danger, he'd have saved himself. She stared into the flames. Is it wrong that I feel more alive right now, hunted and scared, than I did in 3 years of marriage? Nothing wrong with recognizing truth. Jace shifted closer. Even hard truth. The fire crackled between them. Outside, rain drummed on the cabin roof. Clara turned to find Jace watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. This is dangerous, she whispered. You and me. Pike will use it against us. Let him. Jace's hand found her cheek, rough thumb gentle against her skin. I've spent 5 years running from feeling anything, afraid if I cared, I'd lose again. But you... He stopped, searching for words. Clara leaned into his touch, her own hand covering his. I know, I feel it too. The kiss was inevitable as the storm. Soft at first, then deeper as walls crumbled between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. When this is over, Jace said roughly. When Pike's in prison and you're safe, don't make promises. Clara pressed a finger to his lips. Not yet. Too much can happen. They held each other as the storm passed, finding comfort in shared warmth and the knowledge that, whatever came next, neither would face it alone. Dawn broke gray and reluctant over Red Creek. Clara stood at her kitchen window, watching the sun struggle through lingering storm clouds. She hadn't slept. Every shadow could hide one of Pike's men. Every sound might herald violence. The kiss in the cabin haunted her, not with regret, but with a fierce longing that surprised her. She'd been dead inside for so long, going through motions of living without feeling. Now, with danger closing in from all sides, she felt more alive than ever. The irony wasn't lost on her. A rider approached through the morning mist. Clara reached for the rifle, then relaxed as she recognized Jace. He dismounted stiffly, his wounded arm clearly paining him, but his eyes were alert as they swept the property. Pack what you need, he said without preamble. I'm taking you to town. Mary Crowfeather has agreed to let you stay with her family. I'm not leaving my ranch. Clara, he stopped, jaw tightening. Pike's men were in town last night, drinking, talking. They're planning something. Let them come. This is my land. Your land won't do you any good if you're dead. His voice roughened. Please, I can't protect you out here. I don't need your protection. The words came out sharper than intended. Jace stepped back as if slapped, and Clara immediately regretted her tone, but pride kept her from softening. No, he said quietly. I suppose you don't. You've been taking care of yourself long before I came along. He turned toward his horse. But I'll be watching anyway, whether you need it or not. After he left, Clara tried to focus on chores, but her hands shook as she worked. The isolation pressed in, not peaceful as it once had been, but suffocating. Every creak of wood, every gust of wind made her jump. By noon, she couldn't stand it anymore. She saddled her mare and rode to town, telling herself she needed supplies, but really, she needed to see people, to feel less alone. The town felt different. Conversation stopped when she passed. Women pulled their children closer. Men avoided her eyes. At the general store, Mrs. Patterson served her in stony silence, lips pursed in disapproval. Something you want to say? Martha? Clara asked finally. The older woman sniffed. Just that some of us remember what's proper for a widow, taking up with a new man before your husband's even cold in the ground. My husband's been dead 3 months, Clara said evenly. And I haven't taken up with anyone. That's not what people are saying. The sheriff spending all that time at your place, riding out alone together. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward, voice dropping. Vernon Pike says you're using your feminine wiles to turn the sheriff against respectable folks. Clara's temper flared. Vernon Pike is a murderer and a thief. Gasps echoed through the store. Mrs. Patterson went pale. You can't say such things. Mr. Pike is a pillar of this community. Mr. Pike killed my husband. Clara's voice rang clear. He's killed others too, all to steal their land, and he's smuggling guns to whoever will pay." The silence stretched taut, then Mrs. Patterson began wrapping Clara's purchases with sharp, angry movements. "I think you should leave, before Mr. Pike hears about your wild accusations." Clara left with her head high, but inside she trembled. She just painted a target on her back in bright red letters. Outside, she nearly collided with Jace emerging from the telegraph office. His face was grim. "I wired the federal marshals about the weapons," he said quietly. No response yet. He studied her face. "What happened?" "I told Martha Patterson the truth about Pike. She didn't appreciate it." "Clara," he sighed, "you're determined to get yourself killed, aren't you? I'm tired of being afraid, tired of lies." She met his eyes. "Aren't you?" Before he could answer, Vernon Pike himself appeared, flanked by 4 of his men. The street cleared as if by magic, townspeople vanishing into shops and alleys. "Mrs. Hemsworth," Pike said pleasantly, "I hear you've been spreading stories about me." "Truth isn't stories." Clara replied. "Truth?" Pike's smile was cold. "The truth is, your husband owed me money. The truth is, you can't pay. The truth is that in 6 weeks, your ranch becomes mine, legal and proper." "Built on murder," Jace said. "That's your truth, Pike." Pike's men shifted, hands hovering near their guns. Pike himself merely smiled wider. "Sheriff, I've been patient with you. Professional courtesy, you might say. But my patience has limits." He pulled out a folded paper. "This came on yesterday's stage. Interesting reading." Jace took the paper, his face hardening as he read. Clara glimpsed an official seal. Dense text. "Wanted poster," Pike said conversationally. "From Kansas. Seems a man matching your description killed 3 men in Dodge City 5 years ago. Man named Jake Coleman. Funny how much he looks like you." "Those men murdered my brother," Jace said quietly. "It was justice. Courts didn't see it that way. Neither will the good people of Red Creek when they learn their sheriff is a wanted killer." Pike's eyes glittered. "Unless, of course, you decide to move on. Today, leave town, and this paper disappears. And if I don't, then by sunset, everyone will know who you really are. How long do you think a wanted man can wear that badge?" Clara stepped forward. "He's not going anywhere." Pike's attention shifted to her. "Ah, the loyal widow. Tell me, Clara, do you know what happened to the last woman who stood against me?" "No, they found her in the river. Drowned. Tragic accident." His voice dropped. "Rivers are dangerous places. So are wells, and fires start so easily in drought season. Are you threatening me?" Clara's voice didn't waver, though ice ran through her veins. "I'm discussing hazards of frontier living." Pike touched his hat. "Sheriff, you have until sunset. Mrs. Hemsworth, you have until week's end to accept my offer. After that," he shrugged eloquently. They watched Pike and his men saunter away. Around them, the town began to breathe again, people emerging to stare and whisper. "I won't run," Jace said. "Not this time. They'll arrest you. Or worse, Pike's men will gun you down and claim the bounty." "Maybe." He looked at her, something soft and desperate in his eyes. "But I meant what I said yesterday. I'm done running." That evening, Clara couldn't stay away. She found Jace in his office, cleaning his guns by lamplight. Deputy Morrison was gone, fled or bought off. Jace couldn't say. "You should be home," he said without looking up. "It's not safe here. It's not safe anywhere." She moved into the room, closing the door. "Tell me about Kansas. All of it." Jace set down the gun he was cleaning. In the lamplight, his face looked older, carved by shadows and regret. "My brother Danny was 19, gentle soul. Wanted to be a teacher, but I was wild. Got us both tangled up with a gang robbing cattle. When I tried to get us out, the gang leader, Hutchinson, decided we knew too much." His voice went flat. "They made me watch while they beat Danny to death. Left me for dead too." Clara's hand found his. "But you survived. If you can call it that. Took me 3 months to heal. Another 3 to track them down. I found them in a saloon in Dodge." He smiled bitterly. "Fair fight, they say. 3 against 1 is fair on the frontier." But a judge back east didn't see it that way. "So you ran. Became someone else. Several someone elses. Figured if I kept moving, kept my head down, maybe I could find some peace." He turned her hand over, tracing the calluses. "Then I came here, saw you, and suddenly running didn't seem like the answer anymore." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm not worth dying for. You're worth living for. That's what I finally figured out." He stood, pulling her close. "I've got maybe 2 hours before Pike spreads the word, before everything falls apart. Tell me I'm not alone in feeling this." "You're not alone," she whispered. This kiss was different from the first. Desperate, hungry, full of words they couldn't say. When it ended, both were breathless. "Go home," Jace said roughly. "Bar the doors. If Pike's men come, I'll be ready." She touched his face. "What will you do?" "What I should have done from the start. Stand and fight." Clara left through the back door, but she didn't go home. Instead, she went to the one place in town where she might find allies. The church. Father Miguel was preparing for evening service, his weathered face kind as always. "Clara, I heard about the confrontation today." "Father, I need your help. Pike is—" "I know what Vernon Pike is," the priest said quietly. "I've known for some time, but knowing and proving—" He spread his hands. "Evil men often prosper while good men stay silent. Then help me make them speak. You know this town. You know who Pike has hurt. Help me reach them." Father Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "There's a meeting tonight. Families who've lost men to accidents. They gather in secret, afraid to speak openly. Perhaps it's time that changed." Hope flickered in Clara's chest. "How many?" "Enough," the priest said. "If they find their courage, and if your sheriff survives the night." Through the church window, Clara could see the sun sinking toward the horizon. Somewhere in town, Pike was preparing to destroy the one man who'd stood against him. And Clara had to decide, hide and hope, or fight and risk everything. The choice, when it came, was no choice at all. The church basement smelled of dust and fear. 23 people huddled in the candlelight, widows, orphans, brothers of dead men. Clara recognized most: Sarah Morrison, whose husband died in a barn fire; James McKenna, whose brother fell down a mine shaft he'd worked for 10 years; Ellen Cartwright, pregnant and hollow-eyed since her husband's wagon accident. "He's destroying us one by one," Sarah whispered. "Taking everything?" "While we let him," Clara said. "We've all lost someone to Pike's greed. How many more before we say enough?" "Easy for you to talk." James spat. "You've got the sheriff's suite on you. Rest of us got nothing but Pike's boot on our necks." "The sheriff who'll be run out or killed by morning?" Clara faced them all. "Yes, Jace Colton cares for me, and Pike will destroy him for it. Unless we stand together." "With what?" Ellen's voice trembled. "Pike owns the bank, the mill, half the businesses. He's got 24 gunmen. We have the truth, and the federal marshals. If we can reach them." Clara pulled out papers. "I've been documenting everything. Deaths, dates, who benefited. Father Miguel has more. If we combine what we know." Gunshots cracked through the night. Everyone froze. More shots, then shouts from the direction of Main Street. "It started," Father Miguel said grimly. Clara ran for the door, but James caught her arm. "You go out there, you're dead." "If I don't, Jace is dead." She yanked free. "You all decide, keep hiding or fight. But I'm done being afraid." She burst from the church to find Main Street in chaos. Pike's men had surrounded the sheriff's office. Broken glass glittered in the moonlight. Gunfire erupted from inside. Jace was still alive, still fighting. "Sheriff Colton!" Pike's voice boomed. "Or should I say Jake Coleman? Come out and face justice like a man." Clara ducked behind a water trough as bullets whined overhead. She had to reach Jace. but Pike's men commanded the approaches. Then she saw movement, townspeople emerging from shadows, drawn by the commotion. Not everyone fled this time. "There's the widow!" One of Pike's men spotted her. "Boss wants her alive!" Clara ran, diving through the door of Patterson's store as bullets splintered wood behind her. She crashed into shelves, sending goods flying. Heavy footsteps followed. "Come on out, pretty widow. We won't hurt you much." Clara grabbed a heavy iron from a shelf, pressing against the wall. When the gunman rounded the corner, she swung with all her strength. He dropped, blood streaming from his temple. She took his gun, checking the cylinder. 6 shots. Not much against Pike's army, but better than nothing. Making her way through back alleys, she circled toward the sheriff's office. The shooting had slowed to occasional exchanges. How much ammunition did Jace have left? "This is your last chance. Coleman!" Pike shouted. "Surrender, and you'll get a trial. Make us come in, and you'll hang from the nearest tree." "Go to hell! Pike!" Jace's voice, strong but strained. Clara reached the back of the jail. The door hung askew, blown half off its hinges. She slipped inside, finding Jace barricaded behind an overturned desk, blood seeping from a graze on his cheek. His eyes widened. "Clara, get out! Stop telling me to run!" She crouched beside him, passing over the stolen revolver. "How bad?" "Down to my last cylinder. They'll rush soon." He touched her face. "You stubborn, beautiful fool. You should have stayed away. And let you play the noble sacrifice? Not a chance." She peered over the desk. "Pike's got maybe 15 men out there, but look closer." Jace looked. Around the edges of the street, townspeople gathered, not joining the fight, but not fleeing either, watching, waiting. "They need someone to show them," Clara said. "One push and Pike's fear breaks. Or we die, and nothing changes. Then we die trying." She met his eyes. "Better than living on our knees." Before Jace could respond, Father Miguel's voice rang out. "Vernon Pike!" The priest stood in the church doorway, Bible in hand, behind him. The families from the basement meeting emerged. Sarah, James, Ellen, others, all unarmed, but standing together. "This ends now," Father Miguel declared. "Too much blood on this ground. Too many good men dead for your greed." Pike laughed harsh and ugly. "Get back in your church, priest. This is law business. God's law supersedes yours." Father Miguel stepped into the street. "These people have testimony. Evidence. The federal marshals will hear it all." "The federal marshals aren't coming," Pike snarled. "I own the telegraph operator. No message ever left this town." A murmur ran through the crowd. Clara felt Jace tense beside her. "Then we'll take it ourselves." James McKenna called out. "Ride to the Capitol if we have to, all of us. You won't make it 10 miles. Pike's control cracked. "Boys, clear that church. Anyone resists." "No." The voice came from an unexpected source. Tom Brennan, standing with a group of cowboys. Working men who'd kept quiet, taken Pike's wages. Now they faced their boss, hands on their guns. "We hired on to punch cattle, Mr. Pike, not murder women and priests." The tide turned in an instant. Pike's men looked around nervously as more townspeople emerged. The blacksmith with his hammer, the barber with his shotgun. Men and women who'd cowered now standing straight. "You fools!" Pike drew his gun. "I made this town. I own you all." He fired at Father Miguel. The priest stumbled, clutching his shoulder. That broke the spell. Tom Brennan's gun cleared leather, and suddenly the night exploded. Clara and Jace burst from the office, adding their fire to the battle. Pike's men, caught between the sheriff and their own conscience-stricken comrades, wavered. Some threw down their guns. Others ran. A few tried to fight. It was over in minutes. When the gun smoke cleared, 6 men lay dead or dying. Pike himself knelt in the dust, Brennan's gun at his head, cursing steadily. "It's done, Pike," Jace said, badge still pinned to his chest despite everything. "Your kingdom just fell." But Pike had one card left. "Kill me, and you'll never find the evidence." Samuel Hemsworth hid documents that prove everything. The gun running, the murders, names back east. Die with me, or make a deal. We don't need deals. Clara said she remembered something Samuel had said in his delirium, dying in her arms. The old mine. That's where you met, isn't it? Where Samuel hid the real books. Pike's face went white. You can't know that. My husband talked at the end. Guilt does that to a man. Clara turned to the crowd. The Josephine mine. That's where we'll find our proof. Dawn broke as they rode to the abandoned mine. Jace, Clara, and a dozen townsmen. They found everything in a hidden shaft. Ledgers detailing the gun smuggling operation. Correspondence with buyers. And most damning, Pike's journal. His own hand recording every murder, every theft, every life destroyed for profit. Enough to hang him 10 times over, Jace said, reading by lantern light. Clara stood at the mine entrance, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. The night's violence felt like a dream, but the ache in her heart was real. It was over. The fight that had consumed her was won. Now what? Jace joined her, moving stiffly from his wounds. Federal marshals will be here within the week, real ones this time. They'll need your testimony. And then you rebuild. The ranch is yours, free and clear. Pike's claims die with his crimes. He paused. You'll be rich. Actually, court will probably award damages from his estate. And you, Jace looked away. I'm still wanted in Kansas. Last night doesn't change that. Last night changes everything. Clara turned him to face her. Jace Colton, sheriff of Red Creek, helped bring down a criminal empire. Who cares about Jake Coleman? The law cares. Then we change the law. Get pardons. Fight it. She gripped his hands. You said you were done running. Did you mean it? Clara. His voice broke. I'm not the kind of man who gets happy endings. Everything I touch. Stop! She pressed against him, feeling his heart race. You saved this town, saved me. Maybe it's time to save yourself. He kissed her then, there in the dawn light with the mountains as witness. When they broke apart, his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Hope. All right, he said simply. I'll stay. Fight for that pardon. Try to be the man you see in me. You already are, Clara whispered. They rode back together as the town woke to its first free morning in years. There would be trials, testimony, the slow work of justice. There would be those who resented the change, who'd profited from Pike's rule. But for now, Clara allowed herself to feel something she'd thought lost forever, the possibility of a future not defined by fear or loss, but by love and the courage to claim it. The widow and the outlaw sheriff, finding redemption in each other and a town's rebirth. It wasn't the life either had planned, but as Samuel's debts turned to dust and new dreams took root, Clara knew it was the life they'd earned. Together. The forest closed around them like a living thing, pine branches whispering secrets in the wind. Clara guided her mare through the narrow deer trail, following the directions Mary Crowfeather had given her. Behind, she could hear pursuit, Pike's remaining men, those who'd escaped the morning's reckoning and now sought revenge. She'd left town alone despite Jace's protests. He was needed there, organizing the evidence, keeping order as Pike's empire crumbled. But word had come that Pike's lieutenant, Ben Hutchinson, had taken a group into the mountains. They planned to destroy the evidence hidden at Pike's remote cabin before fleeing the territory. Clara couldn't let that happen. Too many families depended on that evidence for justice. The trail opened into a small clearing where a stream gurgled over smooth stones. There, Jace's horse, tied to a sapling. Her heart leaped, then sank. Of course he'd followed her. The man was as stubborn as she was. She found him crouched behind a fallen log, watching a cabin through the trees. His jacket was torn, dirt streaking his face, but his eyes were alert. "Damn it, Clara," he whispered as she slid down beside him. "I told you to wait for the marshals. They won't be here for days. Hutchinson will be long gone by then." "So you decided to take on 6 armed men alone?" "I wasn't planning on fighting them, just watching, making sure they don't leave with anything important." She met his glare steadily. "And I'm not alone now, am I? Despite everything?" His lips twitched. "You'll be the death of me, woman." Let's hope not. She studied the cabin. 2 men stood guard while others moved in and out, loading pack horses. How many inside? 4, including Hutchinson. They're burning documents in the fireplace, loading gold and cash into saddlebags. His jaw tightened. Planning to run for Mexico, from what I overheard. We can't let them destroy everything. We can't take 6 men in a fortified position either. Jace checked his rifle. Unless... A branch cracked behind them. Clara spun to find Tom Brennan emerging from the brush, hands raised. With him were 3 other cowboys, all armed. Easy, Sheriff, Tom said quietly. We're here to help. Why? Jace kept his gun steady. Because we rode for Pike too long, did things that'll haunt us. Tom's weathered face showed genuine remorse. Figure helping you might balance the scales some. Plus, Hutchinson killed my cousin 2 years back, called it an accident. Jay studied them for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we do this my way. No killing unless necessary. They planned quickly. The cowboys would create a diversion. Drawing the guards away, Jace and Clara would slip inside, secure what evidence they could. Simple, dangerous, and their only chance. As the sun dipped toward the mountains, Tom and his men circled wide. Soon, shots rang out from the forest. The guards shouted, running toward the gunfire. From inside the cabin, Hutchinson's voice boomed orders. Now. Jace breathed. They ran across open ground, hearts pounding. The cabin door stood ajar. Inside, smoke filled the main room from documents burning in the fireplace. Hutchinson stood with his back to them, shoving papers into a leather satchel. Drop it, Jace commanded. Hutchinson froze, then laughed. The lovesick sheriff and his widow should have known. He turned slowly, hand inching toward his gun. You're too late. Everything that matters is ash. Not everything. Clara spotted a metal box on the table, recognized Samuel's handwriting on papers beside it. Those are the original contracts, the Eastern connections. Hutchinson's eyes flicked to the box. In that instant, he drew. Jace was faster, his shot knocking the gun from Hutchinson's hand. The big man clutched his bleeding fingers, cursing. It's over, Jace said. Your boss is finished. The whole operation's done. You think Pike was the top? Hutchinson laughed bitterly. He was middle management. The real power. He stopped, eyes widening at something behind them. Clara turned as 2 men burst through the back door. Gunfire erupted in the enclosed space. Jace shoved Clara down, firing over her head. Wood exploded around them. Through the chaos, she saw Hutchinson diving for the metal box. No! Clara lunged for it too. They collided, wrestling for the prize. Hutchinson was stronger, but Clara fought with desperate fury. The box flew from their hands, spilling papers across the floor. More shots. One of the attackers fell. The other ducked behind an overturned table. In the smoke and confusion, Clara lost sight of Jace. Jace, she screamed. Here, his voice came from her left. Get to cover. But Hutchinson had recovered his gun with his good hand. He aimed at Clara, teeth bared in a snarl. Time slowed. She saw death in the barrel's dark eye. The shot was impossibly loud. Clara flinched, waiting for pain that didn't come. Hutchinson stood frozen, a red stain spreading across his chest. Behind him, Tom Brennan lowered his smoking rifle. Told you, Tom said quietly. He killed my cousin. Hutchinson toppled forward. The last attacker threw down his gun, hands raised in surrender. In the sudden silence, Clara heard Jace groan. She found him propped against the wall, hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. No, no, no. She knelt beside him, pulling his hand away to see. The wound was deep but clean, missing the vital organs. You fool! You beautiful, stubborn fool! Takes one to know one, he gasped, managing a pained smile. The papers. Safe. We got them. She pressed her shawl against the wound, fighting tears. Stay with me. You hear me. Jace Colton? You promised you were done running. That includes running from me. Bossy woman. but his hand found hers, holding tight, not going anywhere. "Made you a promise, didn't I?" Tom and the cowboys secured the surviving attacker and gathered the scattered documents. The evidence was damning. Names, dates, shipment routes, buyers from Chicago to San Francisco. Pike had been part of a network smuggling weapons to anyone who'd pay, using the frontier's lawlessness as cover. They rigged a travois for Jace, who protested he could ride despite barely staying conscious. The journey back through darkening forest felt endless. Clara rode beside the travois, never letting go of Jace's hand, whispering prayers and threats in equal measure. "If you die on me, Jace Colton, I'll follow you to the afterlife just to give you hell. Sweet talk won't save me," he mumbled. "Try the truth." "The truth?" Her voice broke. "The truth is, I love you, against all sense, all propriety. A widow shouldn't feel this way after months. Maybe should never feel this way, but I do." His fingers squeezed hers. "Truth is, I loved you from that first day. Standing there with your rifle, ready to take on the world, knew I was lost right then." "Then live," she said fiercely. "Live and prove it." They reached town after midnight. Doc Morrison, despite being cousin to the fled deputy, worked through the night to save Jace. Clara paced outside, still wearing her blood-stained clothes, refusing all suggestions to rest. Father Miguel sat with her as dawn approached. His own shoulder was bandaged from Pike's bullet, but he'd insisted on being there. "He'll pull through," the priest said. "Man like that, with something to live for, he's too stubborn to die." "I've lost one husband," Clara whispered. "I can't, I won't." "Samuel was a good man who lost his way," Father Miguel said gently. "But what you had with him and what you have with the sheriff, these are different things. Don't let fear rob you of the blessing in front of you." The door opened. Doc Morrison emerged, exhausted but smiling. "He'll make it." "Lost blood, but the bullet passed clean through. He's asking for you." Clara flew into the room. Jace lay pale but alert, managing a weak grin. "Told you," he said. "Too stubborn to die." She kissed him then, not caring who saw, tasting tears and promise and tomorrow. When she pulled back, his eyes held that light she loved, hope tempered by truth, love deepened by suffering. "The evidence is safe," she told him. "Tom Brennan's turning witness. Pike's whole network will fall." "Good." He touched her face. "But right now, I don't care about any of that. Clara Hemsworth, I've got no right to ask. I'm a wanted man, a killer, a drifter with nothing but a borrowed badge and a rented room. But, yes," she said. He blinked. "I haven't asked yet." "Then hurry up, because my answer's yes." "Marry me?" His voice roughened. "Not now, not while I'm still wanted, but after, when the pardons come through, when this is settled." "I said yes, didn't I?" She smiled through tears. "But Jace, we're not waiting too long. I've learned life's too short and too precious to waste on propriety." Outside, Red Creek woke to a new day. The federal marshals would arrive soon. There would be trials, testimony, the slow work of rebuilding trust in town. But in that small room, two damaged souls found in each other the promise of healing, the possibility of a love both had thought lost forever. The widow and the outlaw sheriff, writing a new story on the canvas of the frontier, one where redemption was possible, where love conquered fear, and where the past, no matter how dark, didn't have to define the future. Clara held Jace's hand as he drifted to healing sleep, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she believed in tomorrow. The bullet meant for Vernon Pike caught Jace in the shoulder instead. It happened fast, Pike lunging for a hidden derringer during transport to the territorial prison. Clara shouting a warning, Jace spinning to shield her. The crack of gunfire, blood blooming red across Jace's shirt as he fell against Clara. "No!" Clara caught him as he collapsed, his weight driving them both to the dusty ground. Around them, marshals subdued Pike, but Clara saw only Jace's face, growing pale beneath the desert sun. "Can't seem to stop," Getting shot, he gasped, attempting a smile that turned into a grimace. Stop talking! Clara pressed her hands against the wound, feeling hot blood seep between her fingers. So much blood. Too much. Someone get Doc Morrison! Doc's at the Baxter Ranch. Tom Brennan called out. Won't be back till nightfall. Then get anyone. Clara's voice cracked. Whiskey, bandages, anything. The marshals carried Jace to the jail, the closest building with a clean surface. Clara worked frantically, her hands remembering the skills learned tending injured ranch hands. The bullet had lodged deep, too deep for her limited abilities. You need a real doctor, she whispered, cleaning the wound as best she could. You're doing fine. Jace's hand found hers, grip weak but determined. Clara, if I don't you dare. Tears blurred her vision. Don't you dare give up on me, Jace Colton. Not when we've come this far. Mary Crowfeather appeared at Clara's elbow, carrying a leather pouch. My grandmother's medicines, she said quietly. They'll slow the bleeding, fight infection, but the bullet, I'll get it out. Clara's voice steadied with determination. Tell me what to do. For the next hour, guided by Mary's calm instructions, Clara fought for Jace's life. The bullet came free in a rush of blood that made her stomach lurch, but the bleeding slowed, then stopped. Jace had passed out from pain, but his breathing remained steady. He's strong, Mary said, helping Clara bandage the wound with herbs and clean cloth. But he needs rest, quiet, no movement for days. Clara nodded, exhausted. She'd moved mountains to save him, but now came the harder task, keeping him still while he healed. She shouldn't have worried. The next days passed in a fever dream for Jace, leaving him too weak to protest confinement. Clara never left his side, spooning broth between his lips, cooling fever with damp cloths, whispering prayers and promises in the dark hours before dawn. On the third night, his fever broke. Clara woke from an exhausted doze to find him watching her with clear eyes. You look terrible, he said hoarsely. You look alive. She touched his face, assuring herself he was real. That's all that matters. Pike? In chains, heading to federal prison. His network's unraveling across 3 states. She smoothed his hair back. It's over, Jace. Really over. Not quite. He struggled to sit up, wincing. Still wanted in Kansas. Can't ask you to marry an outlaw. Then it's good you already asked, and I already said yes. Clara pushed him gently back down. The territorial judge reviewed your case. Given your service here, the circumstances of the original incident, he's recommending a full pardon. Hope flickered in Jace's eyes. You're certain? Father Miguel delivered the papers himself. You're a free man. Jace Colton. Free to be sheriff. Free to marry. Free to stop taking bullets for people. Where's the fun in that? But his joke couldn't hide the emotion in his voice. 5 years running, and just like that, not just like that, you earned it, paid for it in blood and courage. Clara kissed him softly. Question is, what will you do with your freedom? Marry you, if you'll still have me. Ranch, maybe. Raise horses and children and never shoot anyone again. Sounds perfect. Clara curled beside him on the narrow cot. Though maybe keep the sheriff's badge a while longer. Town needs rebuilding. And you're the only lawman folks trust. Practical woman. He pulled her closer with his good arm. All right. But I want that wedding soon. I've waited long enough to call you wife. News of Jace's survival and pardon spread through Red Creek like wildfire. The town that had whispered about the widow and the outlaw now embraced them as symbols of its redemption. When Jace finally emerged from the jail, still weak but walking, folks lined the street to shake his hand. Don't let it go to your head. Clara murmured, supporting him discreetly. You're still just a man who can't dodge bullets properly. But she was smiling, and so was he. And for the first time since Samuel's death, Clara felt the town's warmth instead of its judgment. That night, alone at the ranch for the first time in weeks, Clara found Jace on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Regrets? She asked, settling beside him. None about you. He was quiet for a moment. But I think about Danny. How different life might have been if I'd protected him better. You were young. You both were. And you've spent 5 years paying penance for something that wasn't entirely your fault. Clara took his hand. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself. Maybe. He turned to her. That first day, when I rode up here, did you know how it would end? I knew you were trouble, Clara admitted. A drifter with dangerous eyes and too many secrets. Should have sent you packing. Why didn't you? Because I was dead inside, going through motions, existing but not living. She met his gaze. You woke me up, Jace, made me feel again, even when feeling hurt. That's worth any amount of trouble. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching night settle over the land. Tomorrow would bring challenges, rebuilding the ranch, establishing new town leadership, planning a wedding that wouldn't scandalize the remaining traditionalists. But tonight, they had peace. They had each other. And for two souls who'd known too much loss, that was miracle enough. I love you, Jace said suddenly. Never said it proper, without bullets flying or death hovering. You deserve the words in calm moments, too. I love you, too. Clara leaned into him carefully, mindful of his wounds. In chaos and calm, in gunfights and quiet nights, all of it, inside the house. Samuel's portrait still hung in the parlor, a reminder of the past, of roads taken and untaken. Clara would pack it away soon, not from disrespect but from readiness to move forward. The past had shaped her but no longer defined her. A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. The night sounds of the frontier, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure, like love, Clara thought, like the choice to trust again after betrayal, to hope again after loss. We should go in, she said eventually. You need rest. In a minute. Jace pulled her closer. Want to remember this, the quiet, the stars. You. Clara understood. They'd earned this peace through blood and courage, through facing down devils external and internal. Every quiet moment felt precious, stolen from a world that had tried to break them. But they hadn't broken, bent, scarred, forever changed, but not broken. And in that not breaking, they'd found something worth more than safety or propriety or the approval of others. They'd found home, not in a place, but in each other. The widow and the outlaw, writing a love story in the dust and blood of the frontier, proving that sometimes the most unlikely paths led to the truest destinations. When they finally went inside, Clara paused at the door, looking back at the land that had taken so much and given so much in return. No regrets? Jace asked, echoing her earlier question. None, Clara said, and meant it. Not anymore. The door closed on the night, on the past, on old griefs and older fears. Inside waited warmth and light and the promise of tomorrow. A tomorrow they'd build together, one sunrise at a time. And somewhere in the territorial capital, a judge signed papers that would free Jace Colton from his past, even as love had already freed him for his future. The official pardon was just paper and ink. The real pardoning had happened in the hearts of two people who'd found in each other the courage to live again. Justice and mercy. Redemption and love. All the things the frontier usually crushed had somehow bloomed in Red Creek's dusty soil. And at the center of it all, a widow and an outlaw who'd saved each other in every way two people could. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles, but in the warmth of the ranch house. Clara and Jace created their own light against the darkness. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges. Tonight, it was enough to be alive, together, and free. The autumn sun painted the valley gold as Clara stood before the mirror in Mary Crow Feather's house, smoothing the cream-colored dress she'd chosen for her wedding day. Not white. She was done pretending to be something she wasn't. The dress had belonged to her mother, practical yet beautiful, with small pearl buttons and delicate lace at the collar. You look radiant, Ellen Cartwright said, adjusting Clara's hair. The young widow had given birth to a healthy son 3 months ago, named him Samuel after all the men the town had lost. Jace won't be able to speak when he sees you. He better speak. Clara laughed nervously. We need him to say, I do. Through the window, she could see townspeople gathering in the meadow behind the church. After everything that had happened, she and Jace had wanted something simple, outdoors, with the mountains as witness, but it seemed all of Red Creek had decided to attend. The whole territory's talking about it, Mary said, pinning wildflowers in Clara's hair. The widow who brought down a criminal empire and the outlaw sheriff who went straight for love. It's like something from a dime novel. Our life's been stranger than any novel, Clara murmured. 6 months had passed since Pike's arrest. 6 months of rebuilding, the town, the ranch, themselves. Jace's pardon had come through as promised, clearing him of all charges. He'd kept the sheriff's badge at the town's insistence, but spent his free hours at the ranch, learning the rhythms of cattle and seasons instead of gunfights and pursuits. A knock at the door made them all turn. Sarah Morrison entered, eyes twinkling. The groom's asking if you're planning to show up or if he should start worrying about cold feet. Tell him I'll be there when I'm ready. Clara said, Man waited 5 years to stop running. He can wait another few minutes. But her hands trembled as she picked up her small bouquet of prairie roses and sage. This was real. After all the death and violence, all the nights she'd thought happiness was behind her forever, she was about to marry a man who'd seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. Clara, Ellen said softly, Samuel would want you happy. You know that, right? Clara nodded, throat tight. I made my peace with his memory. He wasn't a bad man, just a lost one. But Jace, she smiled. Jace found his way back. We both did. They walked to the meadow as a group. Clara surrounded by the women who'd become her friends through shared grief and mutual courage. The crowd parted as she appeared, whispers dying to respectful silence. Then she saw Jace, and everything else faded away. He stood beneath a simple arch of pine boughs, wearing his best black suit with a string tie. The sheriff's badge was absent. This wasn't about his position, but about them. His face, weathered by sun and hardship, transformed when he saw her. The shadows that usually lingered in his eyes disappeared, replaced by wonder and love so pure it took her breath away. Tom Brennan, serving as Jace's best man, whispered something that made Jace grin. Father Miguel waited with his worn Bible, smiling despite the arm still in a sling from Pike's bullet. Clara's walk down the makeshift aisle felt both eternal and too quick. Then Jace's hand was reaching for hers, warm and steady and real. You came, he murmured, for her ears alone. Did you doubt? Never, not for a second. His thumb brushed her knuckles. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Save the sweet talk for after, Sheriff, she whispered back, making him chuckle. Father Miguel cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we gather here under God's vast sky to witness something rare and precious. Two souls who've walked through darkness, finding light in each other. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional with personal touches. When it came time for Jace to speak his promises, his voice carried strong across the meadow. Clara, you gave me a reason to stop running, to stand and fight for something worth keeping. I promise to love you, protect you, and never take another bullet if I can help it. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. I'm yours, today and all the days after. Clara's own vows came from the heart. Jace, you woke me up when I thought I'd sleep forever. You showed me that loving again wasn't betraying the past, but honoring the future. I promise to stand beside you, challenge you when you need it, and love you with everything I have. You're not just my second chance. You're my best chance. When Father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife, Jace kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. The crowd erupted in cheers, even gruff cowboys wiping suspicious moisture from their eyes. The reception spread across the meadow, tables groaning with food, fiddle music filling the air, children racing between dancing couples. Clara found herself pulled from one well-wisher to another, but always Jace's hand found hers, anchoring her. As sunset approached, they stole a moment alone by the creek. The celebration continued behind them, but here was peace. "No regrets?" Jace asked, pulling her close. "Only one." Clara smiled up at him. "That it took so long to find you. Worth the wait, though. Worth everything." She kissed him, tasting promise and permanence. "Now, husband, I believe you owe me a dance." "Yes, Mrs. Colton, I believe I do." They returned to find the party in full swing. Even the territorial judge who'd secured Jace's pardon had arrived, raising a toast to justice served and love triumphant. As Clara and Jace took the floor for their first dance as husband and wife, the setting sun bathed everything in gold. She'd danced at her first wedding, young and uncertain, following steps she'd been taught. This dance was different. No forced movements, no proper distances. Just two people who'd learned that sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the harshest ground. "What are you thinking?" Jace asked, spinning her gently. "That Mary was wrong. This isn't like a dime novel at all." "No. Too unbelievable. A widow and an outlaw finding love while fighting corruption and dodging bullets." Clara shook her head. "No one would buy it." "Good thing we're not selling it then." He dipped her, making her laugh. "Just living it." The stars came out one by one, and still the celebration continued. Clara saw the Hemsworth Ranch foreman dancing with Mary Crowfeather, Tom Brennan teaching his young son to fiddle, Ellen Cartwright laughing for the first time since her husband's death. A town healing, a community reborn. Near midnight, Jace and Clara slipped away to the ranch, their ranch now. The house waited, warm with lamplight and possibility. On the porch, Clara paused, looking back at the distant glow of the party. "You're not the widow anymore," Jace said softly, echoing words from the past. "You're my wife, and you're not the outlaw anymore. You're my husband." She turned in his arms. "Think we can handle being ordinary ranchers?" "After everything," Jace laughed, lifting her over the threshold. "Darling, I think ordinary sounds perfect." But they both knew their life would never be ordinary. Not with their history, their scars, their hard-won happiness. They'd faced droughts and harsh winters, the challenges of building a working ranch, maybe the pitter-patter of little feet if they were blessed. Jace would continue as sheriff until the town found someone else they trusted. Clara would raise cattle and horses, maybe even try her hand at breeding those new hardy varieties everyone talked about. They'd build a life not despite their past, but because of it, stronger for being tested, deeper for knowing loss, more precious for being chosen rather than simply accepted. In the bedroom that had once echoed with loneliness, Clara helped Jace out of his jacket, fingers tracing the scars that marked his journey to her. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," he replied, catching her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing past the outlaw to the man, for being brave enough to love again, for saving us both." "We saved each other," Clara corrected. "That's what partners do." Outside, the October wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying the faint sound of fiddle music and laughter. Red Creek celebrated love conquering fear, hope defeating despair, a future wrestling free from the past's cold grip. And in the lamplit warmth of their room, Clara and Jace celebrated too. Not the dramatic passion of stolen moments between gunfights, but the deeper intimacy of two people who'd chosen each other for all the days to come. The widow and the outlaw were gone, their story complete. In their place stood simply Clara and Jace Colton, ranchers, partners, survivors who'd found in each other the home they'd never dared hope for. It was enough. It was everything. The rest, as they say, was just living. One sunrise at a time, one season to the next, building something beautiful from the ashes of what had burned. And if sometimes Clara woke in the night, reaching for Jace to assure herself it wasn't a dream, he was always there, solid, warm, real. Her answer to prayers she'd never dared voice. Her proof that sometimes the universe saves its best gifts for those who've survived the worst storms. Together, they faced the dawn. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. If you enjoyed Clara and Jace's journey, please let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. We love connecting with readers from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more tales of frontier romance, courage, and redemption. What did you think of our widow and outlaw's adventure? Share your thoughts below.